always got more publicity than other people, and it wasn't like I was trying. In fact, I don't know exactly why. Maybe you can tell me why.
Oh, I could definitely tell you. You said a lot of wild.
Maybe. Maybe.
All right, as you can see, we are on the Young Turks channel, and they're taking a look at a part of the interview that Joe Rogan did with Donald Trump a few days ago. This should be very interesting because, as we know, the Young Turks do not like Donald Trump. They never have. They completely melted down when he was elected in 2016. You can still watch that on YouTube. It's hilarious. And it's funny, though, just watching Trump. The guy is clearly just a natural, or he's just been in this for so long. His instincts are fantastic. So he was just saying how he always got a lot of publicity. Don't know why. I wasn't looking for it. Because he does the things necessary to get publicity, and publicity is necessary in what he does. He just does it naturally. So anyway, let's watch this bit of the interview and see what the Young Turks have to say. Should be very interesting.
He said a lot of wild. And then CNN, in all their brilliance, by highlighting your wild, made you much more popular.
Yeah.
Well, Donald Trump did the damn thing. He went on Rogan's podcast for a friendly 3-hour conversation with Rogan on the Joe Rogan Experience. And look, Trump was his usual self. And I think in the grand scheme of things, this 3-hour conversation worked to Trump's advantage. I feel that it normalized him, humanized him, made him seem like a normal guy that will resonate with at least a huge portion of Rogan's audience. I also found it to be kind of dull, to be honest with you. It was a little boring, a little rambling. There was a fun part where they were talking about hot pilots. That, I perked up a little bit for that part of the conversation.
No, you gotta see this guy. He's out of Central Cast. He's so attractive. The pilot was so attractive, even better than Tom Cruise.
I was like, hot pilots? Where? Like, what are they talking about?
And then a cop comes in. It turns out he's not even a cop. Starts stripping. It was amazing. Okay, he didn't say that last part. All right, so the part we just showed you, that was this best part. You're welcome. Because that was the only part where Joe Rogan held him accountable. Okay, because he has said some wild crap. And he said it to his face. That's good. I like that. And Trump, actually, that was one of his better moments. Because when he goes, yeah, maybe. See, that's good. That's self-effacing.
Yeah.
That people can relate to that more instead of being defensive about it and whining, crying, etc. So that was actually the very best part of the interview. The rest of it, I agree with Anna. It actually made Trump look really good. But the huge problem was it was bereft, what a fun word, of all facts. All facts.
Well, if you watched the interview, please put some comments under this video. I would like to see what you have to say about how you think Trump came across in that conversation with Joe Rogan. I'll admit, I haven't actually watched it yet. So I've commented, I've seen clips from it and stuff, but I've yet to watch it. But as Cenk just said, of course he came across as likable and human and approachable and all that, because he is. It just seems strange to people like Cenk and Anna, because all they do and all the mainstream media do and have been doing since 2016 is attacking Trump relentlessly. So when you actually see him talking to people in an ordinary conversation, it's shocking to these people. They can't imagine that he's human. He's actually human. He's not this monster that the media and we, as part of the media here at Young Turks, have made him out to be over all these years. They just can't get it through their heads. Really, really incredible level of self-knowledge there, Cenk.
Facts at all. So if you watch that interview, you got a completely misleading view of who Donald Trump is.
I wouldn't say it was bereft of all facts. There were certainly a lot of untruths, okay? There were a lot of misleading statements by Trump, but he also said a few things that sounded insane to me. And I was like, that's not true. I gotta look this up. So he made a point, for instance, about how a huge amount of California's rainwater just gets flushed into the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
And the reason why we do that is to conserve a very specific tiny little fish. I'm like, that's not true. That's not true. That's not the reason. Like, I knew that the majority of our rainwater was being flushed into the Pacific Ocean. I didn't realize that was the reason. That's literally the reason. I looked it up. So he says things that sound crazy that actually have truth behind them. But then he says things that sound like oh, that sounds like that might make sense. And then you fact check that, and it's like, no.
Oh, why don't you give an example of one of those? Well, I didn't know anything about this rainwater just being flushed into the ocean in California. And doesn't California suffer from droughts from time to time? Perhaps you can let me know in the comments. But this sounds like an outrageous policy. And it sounds exactly like something California would do, or my home state of Oregon, for that matter, to protect one species, one little species of fish. Now, maybe it plays an important role in the ecosystem. I don't know. But rainwater is also important for human life, for irrigation, in agriculture, for drinking water and all that. So it would be very interesting to have more details about that. Let me know if you know anything about that in the comments. And hit the subscribe button while you're at it if you haven't already done so. It really helps me.
Oh, that was complete and utter BS.
Yeah, there's a couple parts, like of course he's not gonna lie about 100% of the things, and you're right, sometimes, like the raking of the forest we've talked about before.
Yeah.
But that's partly because he doesn't know how to speak, right?
So when he talks about something that I actually think is a good point, like the Native Americans did controlled burns, they did forest management due to wildfires. We don't do that, and there's a price to pay for not doing that. But rather than talk about controlled burns or fire management, he instead talks about raking the forests. So like, if you understand what he's really talking about and what he means, you'll give him a pass. But a lot of people don't know what he's talking about, so.
Yeah, I remember that raking the forest thing. That was in his first term. And of course, he mentioned something about that because there was a big wildfire, or wildfires in California at that time. And he was, as I recall, slamming the California Forestry Department, whatever it's called, for their failure to properly manage woodlands. And he mentioned something about how in Finland or Norway, they rake the forests. Well, actually, I believe, yeah, it sounds like some guy's going out with his garden rake and raking the forest. Obviously, it doesn't mean that. But in effect, they do rake the forest. They drag away branches and bush and all that stuff that is a fire hazard. So, but I remember the media just going ape shit over that at the time and lambasting him and, making fun of him and all that. That is just so typical of the mainstream media from day one against Donald Trump. And here they are bringing it up again. Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks. It's still in their heads. And in fact, yeah, he was talking about forest management, and a type of raking is part of that.
So the idea that you're gonna rake the forest and that's the way you do forest management.
Well, see, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have the exact opposite problem, right? Kamala Harris is a talking point machine. You can't move her off the talking points. And Trump is so far off the talking points that it just doesn't even make sense. He's like, what, you didn't know raking the forest meant controlled burns? Yeah, no, nobody knew that because those things are not the same words, and they're not the same phrases, and not the same concepts.
In Norway, they rake the forest.
The problem with California, they're not raking the forest. Okay, no, that's not exactly it. But anyways, but those are relatively benign. And by the way, if you want to have a debate,
Cenk's impression was not bad there.
About the fish, no problem, got you. But at least he's correct that is why we drain the water out into the Pacific.
Listen, I love those little fish, and I hear you, environmentalists who want to protect the fish. I'd like to protect humanity, and I don't want to have a conversation about literally rationing water when like 80% of our rainwater is being flushed into the Pacific Ocean, specifically to save one fish. There's got to be another way.
I hear you. That's a debate for another time. I agree with you, but others would debate us because 2-inch fish are more important than humans. But anyway, I'm being a jerk about it. We could have a fun conversation about that another day, but much more important stuff.
Okay, so there was a portion of the conversation that really caught my attention, mostly because of how brazen Trump was in sharing details about this. So it had to do with an interaction, a transactional relationship he had with a member of Congress years before he even ran for president. I will just preface this by saying I posted about it on social media and no one cared and everyone tried to justify it. But with that in mind, let's take a look.
So there was a congressman years before I ran, and I was very close to him. And I needed a license on something, and he was very important in getting the license, but it was a little bit controversial, the license, this particular thing that was being licensed. But I was close to this guy and helped him and everything else. And I went to him, I said, I'd like to have you help. And he said, let me take a look at it. I said, ooh, that's not too good. But I really hope you're going to help. And anyway, he tapped me along for a long period of time and ultimately didn't do it. And I said, you are a stiff. You could have done this thing so easy, etc. But it was controversial. He was in Congress for many years, like 28 years. And, you know, there's a reason when somebody's there for 28 years, you got to be sort of smart.
Right.
You know, you have
A
all the scandals.
survivor.
And I realized he was a survivor.
Okay, all right.
Okay, I
Let's
love
get
that
the
story.
irrelevant points out of the way. You are a stiff. Like there's that, and then and then I realized he was a survivor. Like I did not see that coming. I thought.
All right, her Trump impression is lame. Jenks was pretty good. Better than mine, I must admit. Okay, so what? They're basically saying he tried to bribe. I assume they're implying here that he tried to bribe a congressman. What it sounds like to me is he was just doing politics. He wasn't a politician at the time, but he was just he was a businessman doing what businessmen do, big businessmen. You know, what exactly is lobbying, if not what Trump was talking about? What exactly is influence? You know, when you donate to campaigns, you're a big donor to political campaigns, you expect a quid pro quo. And of course, there's rules about this. I have no idea. Personally, I have no idea if what he's describing is breaking any of those rules. It doesn't sound like it. It doesn't sound like he broke any rules. But you know, I'm sure people who are better informed than I can let me know in the comments.
I thought he was going to berate the guy more. But to his credit, he didn't. He tried to make a point about how the guy seemed to be a little more careful because he wanted to survive in Congress. He didn't want to be dealing with scandal. But the point remains that Trump approached a member of Congress who he had a close relationship with, who he had done favors for, and was expecting a favor in return. And that favor was a questionable, controversial license.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what happens, Anna. How do you think politics works? How do you think business works in your country, in America, and every other Western country, and probably every country? That's just the way it works. It sounds corrupt because it is a type of corruption. Now, there's legalized corruption in the form of lobbying and donating to candidates and all that. But, sorry, it is a type of corruption. And when you allow that in your system, it's going to be abused. Now, whether Trump abused it or broke a law, I have no idea. As I say, let me know in the comments what you think about that. Let me know if you can do a better Trump impression than Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks. I certainly can't. I'm useless. Anyway, in the meantime, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. It really helps me grow the channel and continue making content for you.